Welcome to the right seat. As your flight instructor, I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this explainer today. We're going to master one of the most fundamental, elegant, and frankly, confidence-building maneuvers you will ever learn in an airplane, and that's the glide. Now, I know the idea of flying without engine power makes a lot of new student pilots, well, a little nervous. But by the end of our briefing today, you'll see exactly why an airplane is perfectly happy to keep flying, even when the propeller is just idling. So buckle up, get comfortable, and let's dive in.
Here's our flight plan for today. We're going to start with the physics of gliding, and then look at how to maximize your glide range. After that, we'll cover how to find your exact landing spot. Dive heavily into essential cockpit safety procedures, because safety is always our top priority. And finally, we'll execute the PAT sequence. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the physics of gliding. The very first thing we need to clear up is that an airplane without power doesn't just drop out of the sky like a rock. No way. It's still an airplane, it's still generating lift, it's just operating on a slightly different balance of forces. Look at the formal definition here. A glide is a descent without power where the pilot sets the attitude to achieve a desired airspeed and accepts the resulting rate of descent. Notice your active role in this. You aren't just along for the ride. You are physically setting the pitch attitude of the nose to lock in a specific safe flying speed. Basically, by giving up altitude, you're buying airspeed. It is a highly controlled state of equilibrium. To really picture this equilibrium, imagine your normal straight and level flight. Your engine's thrust pulls you forward to beat aerodynamic drag, right? But what happens when we pull the throttle back to idle? And that thrust is gone. Well, think about the physics. When you lower the nose to keep your flying speed, your flight path angles downward. Because of that downward angle, a component of the airplane's actual weight acts forward along the flight path. Gravity literally becomes your new engine. That forward pull of weight balances out the drag, while your lift balances the rest of your weight. When lift, weight, and drag are in perfect equilibrium like this, you get a beautiful, stabilized glide. Moving right along to Section 2, maximizing your glide range. Now, this is a super common point of confusion for student pilots, the difference between endurance and range. Let's say you have a real engine failure. Ask yourself, do you want to stay in the air for the maximum amount of time, or do you want to cover the maximum distance over the ground? If you just need time, maybe to troubleshoot an issue or talk to ATC, you want best endurance. That's a slower speed, let's say 60 knots, which gives you the absolute minimum rate of descent. But if you're looking at a runway a few miles out, you want best range. That's going to be a slightly faster speed, like 80 knots. Sure, you'll descend faster, but your forward momentum will carry you significantly further over the actual ground. And that brings us to the invisible wild card, the wind. You could be nailing the absolute perfect best range airspeed, but remember, the air mass you're flying in is moving. See how a headwind acts kind of like a treadmill? It retards your forward progress and actually steepens your glide path over the ground. On the flip side, a tailwind acts like a moving walkway, pushing you further and flattening out that glide. So, here's a pro tip for you. If you've got a strong tailwind, reducing your speed just a bit can keep you in the air longer so the wind pushes you further. But if you're fighting a tough headwind, pitching down slightly for a bit more speed helps you penetrate that wind and actually cover more ground. It's a real game changer. Which leads us to Section 3, finding your landing spot. Okay, so one of the most vital visual skills you'll ever develop relies on finding a very specific cue. When you're locked into a steady glide, just look out the windshield at the landscape. Most of it will seem to be moving. The ground right below you is rushing past, disappearing under the nose, and the horizon, way off in the distance, looks like it's rising. But there is exactly one spot on the ground that stays completely stationary in your windshield. It just slowly gets bigger and bigger. That spot, that's your impact point. If the field you're aiming for is moving up on the windshield towards the horizon, you're going to fall short. If it's moving down towards the nose, you'll overshoot. Spotting that stationary point tells you literally everything you need to know. Let's transition to Section 4, Essential Cockpit Safety Procedures. Safety is absolutely crucial here. So rule number 1 when practicing glides is this: always, always use carburetor heat. When you pull that throttle to idle, the engine isn't making much heat, but it's still sucking in air. The pressure drop inside the carburetor causes the temperature to absolutely plummet. Any moisture in that air can freeze instantly into carbides, choking the engine. The literal last thing you want is to push the throttle forward at the end of a glide and get nothing but silence. So before you even think about closing that throttle, pull the carburetor heat knob fully to the hot position. On top of that, an idling engine gets cold fast. You have to proactively manage its health. During a long descent, you need to smoothly advance the throttle to about 50% power for just a few seconds every 1,000 feet of altitude you lose. This engine warming procedure does three massive things. First, it keeps the engine block and oil at operating temps. Second, it burns off any carbon deposits that could be fouling the spark plugs at low RPMs. And third, it ensures the exhaust system stays hot enough to actually provide the warm air to the carburetor heat system we just talked about. And hey, while you're managing the engine, you've got to manage your airspace too. When you descend, the nose of your airplane blocks a massive chunk of the sky directly below and ahead of you. To make sure you don't drop right on top of another plane, you've got to make gentle clearing turns, banking left and right every 500 feet. It just briefly shifts the nose out of the way so you can clearly check those blind spots. Because situational awareness, yeah, that's non-negotiable.
All right, bringing it all together in Section 5, executing the PAT sequence.
In aviation, we absolutely love acronyms, mostly because they work when you're under pressure. PAT stands for Power, Attitude, Trim. It's basically the holy trinity for transitioning from one phase of flight to another. To enter our glide, step 1 is power. Smoothly close the throttle to idle, making sure to apply rudder pressure so the nose doesn't yaw. Step 2 is attitude. As your airspeed bleeds off, smoothly lower the nose to your predetermined glide attitude to lock in that perfect speed. And step 3 is trim. You adjust that trim wheel to relieve the heavy control pressures on your yoke. That way the airplane essentially holds the glide attitude all by itself. Power, attitude, trim. Simple as that. Let's look at how this sequence actually builds a steady, stabilized descent. Tracing the path, over at position 1, you reduce the power. Notice how the plane actually stays level initially to bleed off that fast cruise speed. Then, at position 2, right as the airspeed hits your magic best range number, you pitch down to the glide attitude and trim the aircraft. From position 3 onward, it's just a beautifully stabilized descent. You're looking out, you're making clearing turns, you're warming the engine every 1,000 feet, and the airplane is just happily gliding right along in perfect equilibrium. But you know, every glide eventually ends. You're either going to level off at a new altitude or initiate a climb out, which we call a go-around. And the really cool part? The recovery uses the exact same PAT sequence. You just want to anticipate your level off by about 10% of your descent rate. So if you're coming down at 500 feet per minute, start your sequence 50 feet early. Step 1, power. Smoothly advance the throttle to your cruise or climb setting and push the carb heat into cold. Step 2, attitude. Raise the nose to your level flight or climb attitude. And step 3, trim. Just adjust the trim wheel for your brand new aerodynamic setup. It is literally the exact same logic, just applied in reverse.
Well, we've definitely covered a lot of ground today, or I guess a lot of air. You've seen exactly how gravity acts as thrust to balance out drag. You understand how the wind shifts your glide range, and how that one stationary point on the windshield is your ultimate guide. We nailed down the critical importance of carburetor heat, engine warming, and clearing turns for keeping us safe. And you've got the power, attitude, trim sequence hardwired for flawless transitions. So my friend, you know the forces, you know the visual cues, and you know the procedures. I guess the only question left is, are you ready to take the controls?